The Price of Lies. A story of love, deception, and revenge. The night was warm, the air buzzing with laughter, music, and the soft clinking of glasses. The elegant ballroom was filled with well-dressed guests, all gathered to celebrate a mutual friend's birthday. Kendra wasn't in the mood for a party, but Amara, her best friend, had insisted. "You never go out, Kendra," Amara had complained earlier that evening as she dragged her along. "You need to loosen up. Have some fun. Who knows? You might meet someone interesting." Kendra rolled her eyes at the thought. Men were the last thing on her mind. She had been in relationships before, but they always ended in disappointment. She had learned to guard her heart. She stood near the bar, sipping her drink, her eyes scanning the room absent-mindedly. And that was when she saw him. Jeremiah. Or Jerry, as everyone called him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and effortlessly charming. The center of attention. Wherever he stood, laughter followed. His smile was infectious, his energy magnetic. He had the confidence of a man who knew his worth, and people naturally gravitated toward him. Yet, despite all the admiration surrounding him, his eyes kept drifting toward Kendra. She noticed it but pretended not to. Men like him, smooth talkers, players, were dangerous. She wanted nothing to do with his type. But Jerry was persistent. When he finally approached her, his smile was teasing, his confidence unwavering. "Not enjoying the party?" he asked, his deep voice laced with amusement. Kendra barely spared him a glance. "It's fine." He chuckled, pulling out the chair beside her and sitting without permission. "You don't sound convinced." She sighed, turning to face him fully. "Do you do this with every woman?" Jerry raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Charm your way into a conversation, act like you're interested, and then disappear the next day." His grin widened. "You think I'm that predictable?" She shrugged. "Aren't you?" For a moment he studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, he leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a softer tone. "I don't play games, Kendra." She scoffed. "Right. I mean it," he insisted. "I'm single. No wife. No children. No baggage." Kendra's heart pounded at his words, but she wasn't easily fooled. "Never lie to me, Jerry," she warned. "The consequences will be disastrous." He placed a hand over his chest. "I swear on everything I own. No lies." For some reason, she believed him. Despite her initial resistance, Jerry made it impossible to ignore him. He called her every morning just to hear her voice. He sent texts throughout the day, checking on her, making her laugh. At night, he called again, telling her about his day, asking about hers. No man had ever pursued her like this. But Kendra wasn't a fool. She tested him. She called him at odd hours just to see if he was truly alone. He always answered. She showed up unannounced at places he said he'd be. He was always there. No suspicious behavior. No secretive phone calls. Slowly, she let her guard down. And then, she fell. Hard. Jerry was everything she had ever wanted in a man. He was caring, affectionate, and protective, sometimes overly so. If another man so much as looked at her, Jerry's mood would darken. At first, she found it flattering. After all, wasn't it a good thing for a man to want her all to himself? Their first date had been magical. He took her to a quiet restaurant by the beach, where they talked for hours. By the end of the night, he kissed her softly and asked if he could take things further. She said no. And to her surprise, he respected that. That night, she lay in bed, replaying every moment with him. She had been wrong about him. He wasn't like other men. He was patient, kind, different. When she was finally ready, their first night together was unforgettable. She gave herself to him completely, believing he was the one. Her friends envied her. You're so lucky, they told her. Men like Jerry are rare. She believed them. And then Jerry asked her to move in. I want to see you every morning when I wake up, he whispered. I want to hold you every night. Kendra hesitated. She had always been independent, always maintained a sense of control in relationships. But Jerry had a way of breaking down her defenses. So she said yes. She moved in. And that was when the lies began. It started with small things. He would step outside to take phone calls, claiming they were work-related. He started coming home later than usual. Kendra noticed the shift immediately. Who keeps calling you? She asked one evening. Just work, baby, he said, pulling her close. Nothing to worry about. But she worried. She begged him, don't lie to me, Jerry. And he swore he wasn't. Then she got pregnant. She expected him to be excited, but instead, his face filled with panic. Kendra, we're not ready for a baby, he said. I want us to plan for the future first. He convinced her to terminate it. She cried, but she did it for him. Then it happened again. And again. Each time, he had a different excuse, a different reason why they couldn't keep the baby. The last abortion nearly killed her. She woke up in a hospital bed, her body weak, her spirit broken. The doctor's words shattered her world. You won't be able to have children again. She felt like she had died. She had sacrificed everything for Jerry. And now she had nothing. And Jerry? He changed. He barely touched her. He barely looked at her. Kendra knew something was wrong. Kendra sat by the window, staring into the night. Jerry was out again, and her gut told her something was wrong. It had been months since she moved in with him, yet instead of growing closer, they seemed to be drifting apart. The late nights. The secret calls. The distance in his eyes. She wanted to trust him, after all, he had never failed any of her tests before. But something about his behavior now felt different. Kendra tried to shake off the unease, but it gnawed at her. She reached for her phone and called him. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Her heart pounded. Jerry always answered her calls. She tried again. This time, he picked up. Hey, baby, he said, but there was noise in the background, laughter, music, voices. Where are you? She asked, gripping the phone tightly. He hesitated. Work meeting. Kendra felt a chill run down her spine. At nearly midnight. She swallowed. Are you alone? A pause. Yeah, of course. Lie. She heard a woman's voice in the background, soft and teasing. Her hands clenched into fists. I'll be home soon, Jerry added quickly before ending the call. Kendra sat frozen, staring at the phone in her hands. The man who once made her feel like the center of his world was now treating her like an afterthought. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. And she was going to find out what. Kendra didn't sleep that night. When Jerry finally came home, he smelled of alcohol and expensive perfume. He slipped into bed beside her, pressing a kiss to her forehead as if nothing was wrong. Her heart ached. The next morning, she made up her mind. She needed proof. She couldn't confront him without evidence, he was too smooth, too good at talking his way out of things. So she reached out to someone who could help. A private investigator. Mr. Benson was an older man, sharp-eyed and experienced. He listened patiently as Kendra explained everything, Jerry's sudden change, the secret of phone calls, the strange behavior. I need to know if he's hiding something, she said, her voice firm. Mr. Benson nodded. Give me a few days. She left his office with a pounding heart. She wasn't sure she was ready for the truth. But she had to know. 3 days later, Kendra's phone rang. Mr. Benson's voice was serious. We need to meet. Her stomach twisted. When she arrived at his office, he handed her a folder. "I need you to prepare yourself." With trembling hands, she opened it. And the world stopped. Inside were photos, Jerry, smiling with another woman. A beautiful woman. And 3 children. A family. His family. Kendra's breath hitched. "He's married," Benson confirmed. "His wife and kids live in the city. He's been leading a double life." The words barely registered. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pictures. Jerry picking up his kids from school. Jerry kissing his wife outside a restaurant. Jerry holding his youngest child in his arms. The man she had given everything to was a fraud. Tears burned in her eyes. She had lost her womb for him. She had sacrificed her future for him. And he had never even belonged to her. Kendra closed the folder, her body trembling with rage. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Kendra didn't go home that night. Instead, she drove. For hours, she drove through the city, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She replayed every moment with Jerry, the way he had looked into her eyes, the way he had promised her forever. All lies. By the time the sun rose, she knew what she had to do. She was going to confront him. But not alone. She knew where his wife worked. She knew where his children went to school. Jerry had taken everything from her. Now, she was going to take everything from him. It was late evening when Kendra arrived at Jerry's house. She had been there before, she had looked up the address, memorized it. But this was her first time standing outside, staring at the place where Jerry's real life unfolded. She saw him before he saw her. Jerry was outside, playing with his youngest son, tossing him in the air while his wife stood at the door, laughing. The perfect family. The perfect lie. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she stepped forward. Jerry's laughter died the moment he saw her. His face went pale, his eyes widening in horror. "Kendra," she pulled out the gun. Gasps filled the air. His wife grabbed the child and stepped back, confusion and fear flashing across her face. Jerry held up his hands. "Kendra, put that down." Her voice was eerily calm. "You lied to me." "Kendra, listen, you took everything from me," she whispered. His wife turned to him, eyes narrowing. "Who is she, Jerry?" Silence. The coward didn't even have the guts to answer. Kendra's hands trembled, but she didn't lower the gun. "I begged you to be honest," she said, her voice breaking. "I begged you." Tears streamed down her face. Jerry took a step closer. "Please," a gunshot rang out. Blood splattered onto the pavement as Jerry staggered back, clutching his chest. His wife screamed. His son wailed. Jerry's body hit the floor. The world spun around Kendra, her ears ringing. The sound of sirens filled the night. She let the gun slip from her fingers, her body numb. The neighbors had already called the police as police officers swarmed around her, shouting commands. She lifted her hands in surrender. She didn't fight. She didn't run. This was her ending. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the verdict. "Kendra Adams, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Jeremiah Okafor." She didn't flinch. She had already lost her life long before this moment. As she was led away in chains, she glanced at the crowd. Jerry's wife sat in the front row, holding her children, tears streaming down her face. Amara was there too, shaking her head in disbelief. Kendra turned away. She had nothing left. No regrets. No future. Only the cold, hard truth. Love, when built on lies, only leads to destruction. The end. Kindly subscribe to my channel for more stories.